Here's integrated 3. It's problem 1-84. It wants the domain and range for each of the functions. And so these and it wants us to write our answers using inequality symbols if possible. So this one may be a little tricky because it's not a continuous function, it's discrete. And so we're just going to list all the x values for, I guess there's only 3 points on it. So domain is the x values. So I'm going to have -2, and I'm going to have -1, because that's the x value, and I'm going to have 2. That's the domain. And then the range is going to be the y values. So the lowest y value that I can see is -1. This one has a y value of -1. And then this one is y value is 0. And this one has a y value of 1. Next one. Okay, so this one, I'm going to look at the x's give me, I'll write a little x. The x's give me the domain. So I'm looking at the x-axis, and I'm seeing what x is in between. Like, x is just basically in between -1 and +1. Right? When I go left to right across the x-axis, my graph doesn't go any farther off to the right than +1. It doesn't go farther to the left than -1. So I'm just going to simply write x is in between -1 and +1. That says -1 if you can't read it. X is in between negative. Oh, and then I have to be careful with these inequality signs because this one is not shaded, so I'm going to leave that alone. This one is a shaded, a filled-in circle, so that means it includes that point, so I have to do it like that. And then the range, I'm going to look at the y-axis. Why am I doing this in pen? And it looks like my y values range from -1 to +2. So I'm just going to say y is in between -1 and +2. And then I'm going to pay attention to these inequality symbols. So I think it can be equal to -1, but it cannot be equal to +2. We'll check these in a minute and make sure that they're right. Letter C, domain is the x and range is the y. So my x values seem to go from -1 all the way to infinity. So we'll just write this infinity symbol. And then I want to pay attention. So I can't include infinity. It's not includable. So I think we leave this alone. We don't put a minus sign because it's not an endpoint. Because I can always add 1 to it and get more than infinity. And then this one we're not including because the circle is not filled in. And then the range looks like that y's are in between -1 and it kind of shoots up off into infinity. So infinity is not going to have like there's no last number of infinity, so we're going to leave that without the equal sign on it. And this one's an open dot, so we'll leave that alone. Maybe I should check these before I keep going. Make sure they're right. Oh, so I didn't have to say, I mean, that's one way to put it, but I didn't have to say the thing about infinity. So I could have just said that x is greater than -1. Good thing I checked it, right? I wouldn't mark you wrong if you said this, but I mean, why would you write it the long way when you can write it the short way? This, if you read it backwards, says y is greater than -1. So let's do that. I mean, you can do it this way if you want to, but I'm not going to cross it out because they're both acceptable. And then this one, the domain is all real numbers, you can see, and the range is all real numbers. But instead of writing all real numbers, we can just say, they wanted us to use these inequalities if we could. They said use an inequality symbol if possible. So you just write negative infinity and positive infinity. And then same thing with y. All right, there's that.